kicked in. Hello, everyone. This is David Gornet speaking to you on behalf of the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce for today's Infrastructure Division webinar. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to participate in this event. And I'd like to remind you that the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce is the only 5-star accredited chamber in the greater Houston region. As an advocate for excellence in Fort Bend County and beyond, the Chamber serves both our business partners and our community. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to tell everyone in the audience about the chat feature. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in at the bottom of your screen. There's an orange button down there that says chat, and type them in the chat dialog box, and we will then address those questions to Mayor Zimmerman at the conclusion of his presentation. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mayor Joe Zimmerman. Mayor Zimmerman was elected as the 10th mayor of the city of Sugar Land on June 11th, 2016, coming up on 4 years of service to us. Previously, he had served 4 years as at-large position 2 city councilman, and he currently serves on the Economic Development Committee, the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, the Land Use Task Force, Sugar Land Development Corporation Board, and he is the City of Sugar Land representative to the HGAC Board and the Transportation Policy Council. Prior to being elected to City Council, he was a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission for 8 years, serving 6 years as the chairman. We're very pleased to have you with us today, Mayor. Thank you for serving and for joining us. And without further ado, Mayor Joe Zimmerman.
Thank you, David. Carrie, thanks you guys for having me as your guest. I look forward to talking a little bit about what the city of Sugar Land is experiencing, not unlike what every city and every county and every state in the United States are really going through. In a minute, Ryan's going to share the PowerPoint presentation. I believe what I want to do with that is we're going to go through that fairly quickly and get down to what you all want to talk about, which is what's the impact of COVID-19 on future work, CIP, capital improvement plan, not only in the city of Sugar Land, but possibly other governmental entities. And I can probably, because I've had some contact, actually a lot of contact with TxDOT and Metro, City of Houston, Fort Bend County, other cities, I could probably give you a little insight. So Ryan, if you go straight to, it'll be the number 3 slide. So as you all would expect with COVID-19, once it came into play, and we actually started tracking it in January. Of course, in February it became a reality, and in March came even closer to home. It is true in every governmental entity that no one has ever experienced this before, and that we are now in the process of reopening the economy and reopening restaurants. We're under the guidance of our Governor Abbott. This is phase 1. It started last Friday. Phase 2 is presumed to be May 18th if all goes well. And then phase 3 would be what we would consider to be a reopening at 100%. And that date has not been established. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. So we being the city of Sugar Land, in the our economic development department, Elizabeth Huff, reached out to our businesses early on to understand what the impact is. I'm not going to read those slides to you, but those slides give all of us insight as to how deep this COVID-19 has affected our businesses and the employees that work there. Next slide. Next slide, Ryan. these are the basically the state health protocols that we're all operating under. I'm not going to go through them. I think everybody is well aware of what that is. The governor's orders, we've put it on the website so that if you haven't seen his order, you can look at them. You can look at previous orders that he's issued. Next slide, Ryan. This is just the guidance that the state of Texas has given us for employers. Next slide. And for Texas industry, next slide, please. Go ahead, the next slide. So let me give you an overview of the city of Sugar Land. City of Sugar Land budget overall is about $272 million a year. It's broken out really into two parts. There is the general fund. The general fund in Sugar Land is about $97 million. And the enterprise funds, things like the water, wastewater, airport, those things are what we call, those are the other funds that are there, and they make up the balance of the budget. Those are the enterprise funds. The enterprise funds basically pay for themselves. They pay for themselves through water and sewer rates, through in the airport, it's landing fees and jet fuel and avgas sales. But the thing you should come away from is in the enterprise funds, they have assessments of fees, et cetera, that balance their budget for them. In the general fund, it's a little bit different. The general fund has three primary revenue sources. That's the $97 million. Part of that is sales and use tax. That's about $54 million is sales and use tax. Property taxes are around $45 million, and the balance is permits and fees and other sort. Those are the big three in terms of the dollars. It is true that with the impact of COVID-19, we being the city of Sugar Land, every other city that has sales and use tax revenue streams, city of Houston, mostly cities, there are very few counties that really participate. Some of them do a little bit, but theirs are mostly property tax revenues. We will see, we believe, about 10% impact, or about $6 million in our sales and use tax. Like any business, the city of Sugar Land, we're really good under the city budget. We have to balance our revenues and expenses. Of course, we're not a for-profit entity. So revenues equal expenses. When revenues are short, expenses have to be trimmed. You'll see there the four things that are in our financial management policy statements, which are priority rank. So our city manager, Mike Gooderham, knows that the first item is a hiring freeze. We've been under that since early March. Limiting spending to essential items, that kind of goes without saying. The departments have been asked to look at their expenses and trim all non-essential. Line item reductions in the departmental budgets, that really speaks to that. And then placing any new initiatives or special projects on hold. That more or less goes without saying. Bottom line, the city of Sugar Land, unlike some other cities and probably even some counties, we will be fine getting through this. We have been through Hurricane Harvey. We've been through the Great Recession back in 08, 9, 10, and really 11. And we came through. There will be impacts to our budget. There will be impacts to our employees. And the last thing that we'll want to do is impact the services that we provide. Next slide, Ryan. So this talks a little bit about the state and federal support. Bottom line, the revenue shortfall that the city of Sugar Land will experience on the sales and use tax side, right now there is no government funding for that. So the federal government has not reached out and said, hey, we know you're going to be missing $5 to $6 million, but we're going to loan you or give you that money. They have that program is not in place. That policy is being discussed right now, and we're not sure of whether that we'll be able to get that through the federal government. There are funds that are coming through to the county through the CARES Act from the federal government that will then also flow to the cities in Fort Bend County. But those are essentially to pay for only personal protective equipment, as well as expenses that we incur specific to COVID-19. And we will be audited. All governmental entities that take that will be audited to make sure that we comply with the way the law is written. Like any federal law, there are a lot of details that don't get talked about in the public. Next slide, please. So what are we doing in the meantime? Well, under our city charter, our city manager has to deliver our 2020-2021 budget in July of this year. And of course, with everything that's going on right now with COVID-19, that makes that a difficult process without something like COVID-19. It's extraordinarily difficult now. So our senior staff at the city, our departments, our entire city is focused on, first and foremost, continuing to provide the essential services at the same levels that we've always provided them. Secondly, looking at what the impact's going to be on next year's budget and how we will deal with that. Next slide, please. So we're going to go into what we talk about as a new normal here at the city, which is we're going to build in as much resiliency. You can translate that as flexibility as we can. We have always been and will continue to be, we are a data-driven, we are data-driven on the decision side. So we don't react to emotion. We don't react to things in social media that are not factual. We verify the facts and we make fact-based decisions. We are fully prepared to adapt and adjust. We've done that in the past. We'll continue to do that. We fully expect a second wave of COVID-19. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because we are ramping up, the county is ramping up testing. We have multiple sites in Sugar Land, one at the Smart Financial Center, one at United Memorial Healthcare over off of Highway 6. The county has a site out at the fairgrounds, and they're establishing a site out near Fulshire, and they've got one other site, I think at Marshall. So as we ramp up testing, we fully expect more people to come in positive. Hopefully there will not be a ramp up in the loss of life, but we're preparing for the recovery. Next slide. And I'm gonna go into what David asked me to address. So the city of Sugar Land, in our budget, we have about a $60 million capital improvement plan. Many of you know that last year, the voters approved $91 million in a bond referendum that was done in November. And that $91 million was comprised of $47 million for drainage projects, about $27 million for health and safety related projects, and another $17 million for streets. I'm pretty comfortable right now telling you we're going to move forward with the drainage projects from that bond referendum. That's $47 million. And those are to mitigate not only another Hurricane Harvey, but some of the impacts that we saw from Hurricane Harvey, and actually the May event last year where we had some flooding out in Greatwood. First and foremost, drainage will take front and center. Roads, unless drainage is associated with us, less so. That doesn't mean we won't continue to do water and wastewater. Certainly we will, but if they're deemed non-essential, in other words, if they can be delayed for some period of time, we would delay them. I think that is true in conversations I've had with the county. I think the county right now has heard from their chief budget officer that he is not recommending mobility bonds in 2020. They would be pushed. Of course, that's not a decision the mayor gets to make, but I think we'll see that across the board. I know in talking to Mayor Turner, that's certainly on the plate for him. I think Judge Hidalgo, I think for everybody, will look toward, we're still going to do projects. We're still going to do engineering. We're still going to do construction. We're just going to, it's going to be a little slower throughput than it would have been had we not had the impact from Corona. And David, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I've got a couple questions. Interesting about the sales and use tax percentage of our overall budget. On a personal side, we've seen some reductions in expenses. For instance, our fuel consumption is down and the fuel cost is down. What I used to get a tank of gas for the last 8 weeks is lasting me significantly longer than it did prior to that. Has the city seen any reductions in cost in certain line items?
Well, we have seen a reduction in cost and revenue, David, and I'll take the airport as a very specific example. So the airport balances its budget based on avgas and jet fuel sales. And we've seen because of the impact on COVID-19, even private companies and with planes and jets, their travel has been curtailed. So we've seen a significant reduction in revenue, of course, a commensurate reduction in expenses at the airport. On the fleet side, I really can't speak to it, but I know that on public works, we continue to respond on the public works side. So I doubt that we've seen much of a reduction in fleet. Critical personnel, that being police, fire, EMS, and public works, are still out and about at the same service levels that they would normally be, David. So those expenses are going to be the same. You and I have kind of experienced the same thing. I mean, where I put 200 miles a day on my truck, being around in the engineering consulting business, and go through 3, 4, 5 tanks of gas a week. I go through a tank every other week now. The price of a barrel of oil at I think now the last time I saw it's inching back up toward $20 a barrel. In order for this thing to recover fully for the city, we have to reestablish demand in the businesses, the restaurants. All of us that are working from home now need to go back to work. We need to go back to more of a normalized routine that reestablishes demand for gas, pushes the price of a barrel of oil up, and overall the business, the business community can begin to recover. I have heard I was around, you and I talked a little bit before, I was around Friday night when we opened, and Nancy and I spent about 3 hours out in the community at different restaurants. It was a mixed bag. We had some restaurants that had, if they had outside seating, they had pretty good attendance on the outside, less so on the inside. Still doing takeout. Some restaurants weren't even open. The mall wasn't open. Nancy and I traveled Sunday, and the San Marcos outlet malls, only about 3 stores were open, which I was surprised. I was surprised. So what I take away is that it's been an uneven recovery so far. I think that as we coax people like you and Terry, Nancy and I, everybody else back out, they get comfortable with going to restaurants with their family and their kids, we can begin the real road to progress, which will reestablish sales and use tax, plug the holes in the city's budget, and get us back on a more normalized track.
What has been, I presume that you've gotten your refunds or rebates of sales tax from the state in March. I don't know if you have any feedback on what April is going to be. Have we seen a 20% reduction, a 30% reduction, 40% reduction? What's been the approximate percentage decline in those 2 months? March, interesting that you asked about March. It tends to lag about a month, David. So March was actually up a little bit. Through the year, through the first quarter,
the first calendar year quarter. Our quarter starts on October the 1st. So through March, we were actually, sales and use tax was up. We have not seen the sales and use tax numbers for April. We know that they will be down. And the projection through April, through the end of the year, is what I talked about earlier, which is that 10% sales and use tax being down 10%. You know, truly that's an educated guess at best. That's a projection. It's not something that anybody would say is a given. It all depends on how quick the economy recovers and people begin to get back to, I mean, we're based on a consumption economy. So the economy in the United States is based on you and I, Terry and Nancy, buying stuff. And right now, I suspect with the job losses in the oil and gas, with some of the uneasiness in some of the other business sectors, people are going to be a little bit cautious. So I expect there to be even if we recover quickly, there'll be an impact from sales and use tax.
Yes. And you brought up oil and gas issues. COVID-19 obviously is a big deal. It's affecting us immediately. We see oil and gas. We all have many friends that are in that business, and they're anxious about how that's going to happen. One of the comments that we have online here is the city seeing a decline in new development projects. Probably that's more related to oil and gas, the weakness in that sector versus the COVID-19. But what's been going on? What's the city seeing with those new permits or development issues?
Well, the good news in the city of Sugar Land, or the bad news, depending on how you look at it, is we are now a mature city. So residential development, single family, is mostly resale. There's not a lot of new homes in the city of Sugar Land, you know, new developments, if you will, small percentage. There are a number of commercial projects. Many of you guys are familiar with Imperial Market. Imperial Market now, we were very close to what we believed was we were getting ready to kick that off, and with COVID-19, it's now on the back burner. Doesn't mean it's dead, it's just been delayed and will have to be resurrected at some point in the future. The General Land Office land that we purchased from the GLO, the General Land Office of the state of Texas, which is industrial development. We have now, Jim Calloway tells me we've almost solved the drainage on that, which will allow us then later in the year to possibly go out for a public-private partnership for an industrial development. That's about 165 acres. And then I think near and dear to most people's hearts is over by the Smart Financial Center, which is the land that is currently owned by Newland. And we have, of course, the land that is owned by Flora. Flora's project is on hold for the time being. And Newland is trying to work through what they believe could be a PD plan development that would be consistent with the conversations they've had with the city over time. I think it's true. We had hoped to be moving forward with a hotel conference center later this year. Based on COVID-19, that project will be on hold.
Okay. I see some other comments here on the side. An assessment, and you addressed this earlier about the CARES Act, and will any of the additional services, additional cost as our first responders, and I don't know if you can see these, Mayor, on your side, on your screen, the chat bar.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, David, I just called them all. So let me see.
So the assessment of how we might be able to get some reimbursement for additional expenses on from the CARES Act for our first responders, that they have to handle things a little differently as they're going out to sites.
Yes, my understanding is that is available under the current CARES package. In other words, anything related to PP&E, there is, I think, some labor included in that for specific to COVID-19. Where the line gets drawn is any of that money available to replace the lost revenue that we may experience from COVID-19? And the answer to that currently is no. And we're trying to work that with Senator Cornyn, Senator Cruz, State Representative Olson. Right now, that policy is not in place, and that policy has not been put in place.
One of the questions I see further down there is one that I had written down. COVID-19 and any impacts to property values, therefore impacting property taxes. What have you heard from various economists that might be advising the city or coming out of the Greater Fort Bend EDC and Jeff Wiley's team on potential economic or potential impacts to property values?
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the process, David. So, you know, the tax rate that the city of Sugar Land established last year, the values were as of January the 1st of this year. So I have heard discussion of commercial properties going up in value. I know from talking to Jennifer May this morning, we've gotten a glimpse at so the city of Sugar Land has basically two parts to our tax roll, a residential and a commercial piece. And the residential piece appears to be, based on what we've seen on the numbers, appears to be a little bit shy of 3%. That's consistent with what we've seen in years past. Commercial, we don't have a good feel for that. We do know that some of our commercial clients have said that they've seen values go up. But the details of that, I think it's a little bit too early for at least me to address those details because I don't have that specific knowledge. We won't get our preliminary tax roll until July, which is what makes our city manager's job, Mike Goodrum, so interesting for him, is that he's asked to prepare a budget without knowing what ad valorem tax revenue he can expect. And so it's a lot of a moving target from the city perspective, because as I said, the general fund, property taxes go for two things: the general fund and debt service. And I don't, at my fingertips, our city tax rate is 33.2 cents. And a portion of that, that's the ad valorem tax rate. And then a portion of that goes to debt service. We've actually increased the debt service percentage this last year versus the other part going to the general fund. So we don't know what that, because we don't know the value, he won't know until July what his revenue actually is. Now, we budget in our financial management policy statements, we budget for the net effective. You can read the net effective by definition is the amount of revenue raised or the assessed value that you had last year that does not include new value. And we budget for the net effective plus 3%. We've changed that a little bit over the last couple of years because we've moved our CIP away from where at one time we used sales and use tax dollars to fund that. We now use ad valorem tax dollars to fund it because it's a more predictable revenue source. And one of the geniuses of our previous city manager, Alan Bogart, was he saw the volatility in sales and use tax was causing issues for us on our CIP. And we basically restructured it 2 years ago to be ad valorem tax base versus sales and use tax base. That's a little bit more complicated than probably everybody wanted to hear.
That's okay. I think you already addressed this, but one of the questions is, do you believe that some of the stalled projects, and I don't like the term stalled, delayed projects will restart in the fall? And I believe you were already indicating that we'll see how everything plays out here.
Yeah, David, it's absolutely a function of how quick the economy recovers and how quickly we reestablish our traditional sources of revenue on the sales and use tax side. if we were to see a huge increase, for example, to where that, let's say the $6 million gap gets reduced to 3 million. Well, we're not going to pocket the 3 million. We're going to deploy that into our capital projects.
You know, there are some places that are probably seeing increases in sales tax revenues. I'm trying to think. Joanne's Fabric Shop is always got a line of folks out there trying to buy stuff to make all their masks. So they're probably happy with what's happening in their business model. And while their sales tax contribution might be low, we'll see some increase out of that.
Yeah, Home Depot, David, Lowe's, I think those areas that people have been, I mean, I've spoken to friends, they've got, you know, remodeling projects underway because they've now got the time to pursue them. So those kinds of things, we probably will see sales and use tax going up, less so on some of the other areas.
Yes, yes. And a follow-up question there, is the city planning to move forward with reprogramming the municipal court and police facilities? Any other plans for the police or courts?
Well, if by reprogramming, we're talking about building a new municipal court facility, we'll deal with that. That probably gets pushed, I would think. Other plans for police or courts, we're in a pretty good spot right now if we put that in place. I mean, we have a lease where we have some of our police officers, which is around the corner from the police department. The reason for doing municipal court, and actually it's emergency ops center and dispatch, was because of the special requirements for the emergency ops center and the dispatch being in police. They needed that space. So as soon as we can reestablish that, well, we will, and we'll push those projects back in. But for right now, those projects are probably going to be on hold.
Okay. You see down there on the list about property taxes, opportunities to create a digital infrastructure. I'm not sure what that question is. If you will glance through that, see if we can address that on the bottom there, item 2.
By digital, if you mean attracting digital companies to Sugar Land, we continue to look for all companies. I mean, digital otherwise. Examples of companies that we've attracted in the past that are highly technical would be Applied Optoelectronics. I think Fluor is another one. Schlumberger, even though Schlumberger didn't move forward with their capital plan to build a new building, it's interesting. We met with them probably 6-7 weeks ago, and they actually moved all those employees down here. So we saw the pickup, if you will, from the executives that moved to Schlumberger. They did a lot of internal remodeling. They just didn't actually build a new facility. And that facility, I think, is certainly on hold given the oil and gas prices that we see right now. But we've actually seen the pickup in the employees. Property tax, it gets a lot of discussion. Property tax is outside the control of the appraisal process is outside the control of the city and the county and square in the control of the state. The appraisal district was created, the central appraisal district process was created by the state. David, when you and I got out of school, we had all the governmental entities, the MUDs, the cities, the counties, everybody had their own appraisal or appraisal consultant. So appraisal and collections was done at the individual level. The state decided that they knew better. They were going to go to a central appraisal district who now does all the appraisals and then they collect for us. The decision that we make is we decide on the tax rate. School district has a tax rate, county has a tax rate, MUDs, LIDs, they all have their own tax rate, and those respective boards decide on the rate. We have absolutely nothing to do with the assessed value that is advanced by the appraisal review board or the appraisal district. The appraisal review process is what is legally in place for people that have properties that they believe have been overvalued, either residential or commercial. There's been a lot of discussion about whether that process is fair or not. I can't really comment on that, but I know I continue personally for the city of Sugar Land, continue to push our state legislators to revamp the appraisal district process, make it more transparent, make it, I've been through it personally on my townhouse. The only reason I could even get through it was because I had, 20 plus years of real estate experience, or I would have never made it through that process. So I think that shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't all have to be experts in real estate to be able to go through the appraisal review process. I think that could probably be more transparent and a little easier to navigate.
Well, I think the question here is something we were talking about earlier, is what is the potential impact on tax values from COVID? And we've discussed that on both the commercial side and the residential side, as well as, I would include what is the potential impact with the oil and gas challenge, or the oil industry challenge, because it's more oil than gas that's being impacted directly right now.
And David, we'll see that impact. I've been in contact, just because of my full-time job, with bankers, with developers. There is, and I'll just paint a real simple example. So a restaurant that is in a strip center that has rent due possibly this month, but has not been able to open, or has only been able to open curbside, may not have the revenue to be able to pay rent. Okay, so the restaurant owner decides he can't pay rent. He asks for restructuring terms. The owner of the center, who has a bank loan on the center, well, his payment is predicated on those rental payments that he gets from his tenants, all of which, or many of which now, want to restructure their deal. So he goes back to his bank and says, I can't make my payment on the strip center, and I need to renegotiate my terms. And the banker then goes back to his shareholders, or the government, wherever he got his money, and said, well, I need to so you can see it's kind of a domino effect. That effect we won't know until next year's assessed value, which will be January of 2021. And we fully expect there to be an impact. We just don't know what that is.
Correct. I know while it's outside the infrastructure domain, the opportunity to recruit new business in, and interestingly, with COVID, they've relaxed some of the rules where for the medical industry that allows for some telemedicine. But are there industries out there, you can see the comment down there, that we could be recruiting? So many of our residents are telecommuting. We're participating in telemedicine. If you've got an issue, you can call your doctor and do it over the phone. Do some more issues with the healthcare industry to try to attract greater investment in healthcare in this area. I'm sure the city's looking at, but do you care to elaborate on any of that?
Yeah, we would be, and I agree. Q I think is with IBM, so I mean I'm sure they're way out in front on this stuff. But the opportunity to telemedicine, telecommute. I think the restructuring that we're seeing. I saw an article this morning from United Airlines. They're going to go through a massive restructuring of their business effective October the 1st. I mean, I saw a picture on the 6 o'clock news the other night. And you probably saw it too, David, which was they showed one of the terminals up at IAH Intercontinental Houston, and there were like 2 people there, and there were 2 bags, and that was on a Friday afternoon. Place would have normally been packed from everybody flying in. Well, what that tells me is that people are getting used to doing exactly what we're doing, Zoom or Teams or whatever. Most cities, most counties are not open for face-to-face meetings, so everybody's telecommuting. And we are now, your business, you're in the consulting engineering like I am, we are now, I think you and I talked earlier, I mean, probably 70, 75% of our consulting business is working from home. And we haven't seen, and we're able to do that, we're able to do that efficiently. There's been a little bit of an impact with getting city and county responses. Your firm's probably noticed the same thing, but we're working through that too. So at the end of the day, it isn't going to be necessarily necessary in the future for you and I to run down the city of Houston or run down to Harris County in order to get something accomplished. We're probably going to, fire up the old Zoom or Teams, have a conversation with David or Joe and say, here's our comments, address that, resubmit, and you're good to go. And I think it fundamentally will restructure the way people, both as individuals and businesses, do business.
It has been interesting the way that our city and county within the region have been able to adopt some more flexible business models that allow for a lot of stuff to be done online. It should make it cheaper for us to do our work. It
Yes.
should make it easier for them to review it, to offer comments. Should streamline the efficiency of this instead of the old plan sets we would have to carry down and have paper plans and get red lines back from the city and have to carry those back to the office and go through them all. And it should be much quicker, which is an economy of, or brings savings to us, to our clients, to the city, help everything to be done more efficiently.
Yeah, I was talking to Blackline Engineering, Julie Billette, the other day, and let's just say she's a little bit younger, and she didn't even know what I don't think they've had to deal with the old process at the city or the county. And we were kind of laughing about it. It's just a difference in generations. I mean, and that will continue to be driven by technology. It's certainly true on the oil and gas side. I know when I first started with Exxon and Friendswood, we flew everywhere. Then it became teleconferencing, and now it's Zoom and Teams. So that'll continue to restructure the business. And to your point, David, it's just lowering those costs and making it more efficient to do business.
So, yeah, and our clients are going to be looking forward to us passing that savings through.
Absolutely.
They'll beat up on us some more for our fees in that. So I'm not seeing anybody else adding more comments out there. We would welcome getting some more questions or comments here for the mayor. Mayor, I do appreciate you and your staff, because I know it took time for the staff to put together the PowerPoint presentation that you took time to show us there. I like the education about where our city funds are between a $72 million budget. What happens in the general fund, what happens in our enterprise funds. Not everybody's familiar with what's going on, that water and wastewater are their own funds and they operate independent, that our airport operates independently. So that's all good stuff to have out there.
I see the comment. Let me go ahead and clear that up so everybody knows. Nancy and I both graduated from the University of Houston. So yes, I have a football helmet. I did not play football at the University of Houston. I was Stephen F. Austin, but I do have a football helmet that was given to me by, I think that was Renew that gave me that helmet. But yes, I advertise the University of Houston. It is a great university. We're both alums. Wiley, you should have gone there. I'm not sure where you got your degree, but you certainly didn't get the education I did.
Well, as another University of Houston student,
that's right.
And one of my kids is a U of H alum. I too support the University of Houston. They've done great stuff in the city. They're doing great stuff in the city of Houston. They're doing great stuff here In Sugar Land, they continue to expand the class opportunity for students, both those that might be more mature like you or I, to expand our career opportunities, or for those that are younger and just starting out, that they have a resource here locally. They don't have to drive to downtown or the main campus and that all the time. They can get it all done here. They're looking at more and more online opportunities for education, and they've been in the forefront of providing that to us.
Well, David, if folks haven't been by the new technology building at the University of Houston Sugar Land, they need to go by it. They've expanded the offerings there, as you said. They've expanded offerings through the business college, through the College of Technology, certainly, and that is an outstanding facility that I believe we're going to expand, in the future.
Carrie's already taken the opportunity. The universities opened themselves up for a couple of chamber events that have been there, that have been open to the public, or to chamber members at least, to come and participate in and to see the resources that we have here locally. And I hope that they will continue. I'm sure they will continue to do that, and Carrie and the chamber will take advantage of that to showcase some of the resources we have. So, not seeing more comments there, other than some great thanks to our mayor for his continued leadership of the city, and to all the good things that are going on. I want to tell everyone we have 42 participants online now. I want to thank everybody for what's going on, and Mayor, thank you for joining us today. Got a follow up here. On Thursday, May the 7th, the Government Division is hosting a webinar with City of Richmond Mayor Evelyn Moore. Be done similar to the one here with Mayor Zimmerman. Mayor Moore will discuss the City of Richmond's existing businesses and resources that are available during the pandemic. On Tuesday, May 12th, the Education Division is hosting a webinar with Fort Bend ISD Superintendent Dr. Charles Dupree. Dr. Dupree will discuss how Fort Bend ISD is managing the instruction for their 78,000 students, changes to the graduation policy that have occurred, and how changes will occur for the upcoming fall semester. Our next Infrastructure Division meeting will again be in this month. We're going to host a webinar with Fort Bend County Commissioner Vincent Morales on Thursday, May the 21st. The commissioner will provide a county perspective on infrastructure updates from Precinct 1 and how the county is dealing with and responding to COVID. If you're interested in joining any of these chambers or webinars, please view the chamber calendar online at fortbendchamber.com for any additional details or to register for the webinars. Those engineers that have joined us today can claim a professional development credit hour towards their registration requirements. Please email Ryan or myself and we will get a certificate that is sent out to you. Again, thank you to everyone for attending this informative presentation with Mayor Zimmerman. A recording of this webinar will be available within 48 hours on the Chamber website under the Business and Professional Division tab. Thank you all very much and have a great day.
Hey, David, I've got one closing thing that I'd like to say. I want to thank Carrie in front of you guys. I reached out to Carrie probably a little over 2 weeks ago, and what we were trying to do was get how do businesses reopen safe. She was able to get with many of the members in the chamber, put together a very thorough package. We were able to submit that to Governor Abbott, to Senator Colhurst, and that went a long way in convincing him to reopen the state. So again, Carrie, thanks to you and your team for getting that thing put together. That's what makes Fort Bend and Sugar Land different than everywhere else. We're able to respond, and we're able to respond quickly. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all. Ryan, are you still running the show there in the background?
Yes, sir. I am. Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you, David. That was great and very informative.
Thanks, Ryan. Carrie, see y'all.
See y'all later.
Have a good day.
You
You
too.
too, David.
Bye.